AITA for hiding my $31 million until Thanksgiving and refusing to split it with my brother? I am 34 years old, male, and the older of two children. My brother Tyler, 29, has been the family favorite since birth. I'm not exaggerating. From the moment that child existed, my parents acted like they had won the lottery. Meanwhile, I was essentially the prototype they tolerated while waiting for the arrival of the real star. Let me describe what favoritism looks like when it doesn't even try to hide. Growing up, the favoritism wasn't subtle. It was aggressive, obvious, and displayed on social media. Tyler received a brand new Honda Accord for his 16th birthday, with a huge bow on it. My parents invited the whole neighborhood to watch him receive it like a car reveal event. They posted about 50 photos on Facebook with captions saying how proud they were of their incredible son and how much he deserved this gift for being such a wonderful young man. The party lasted 4 hours. They hired a caterer. There were balloons and a banner. My dad gave a speech about Tyler's bright future and how the car was just the beginning of all the great things he expected. People applauded. Tyler cried. Mom cried. It was like attending a graduation ceremony for receiving a car. For my 16th birthday, I got a used bike bought on Craigslist, a size too small. No party, no Facebook post, just a happy birthday at breakfast before Dad went to work. The bike had a rusty chain and a seat that wouldn't stay straight. When I pointed out the problem with the seat, Dad said riding it like that would build character. I rode that thing for 2 years before the frame cracked, and when it finally broke, I had to save my own money earned from mowing lawns to replace it. The contrast was obvious to everyone. My friend's parents saw Tyler's new car parked in our driveway, then saw me riding on that beat-up bike and asked questions. My parents' explanation was always a variation of, "We believe in teaching different lessons to different children according to their needs." Translation: Tyler deserves nice things, and you don't. But the car was just the start of the inequality show. Tyler went to a fancy private school across town called Westmont Academy. $25,000 a year, small classes, full college prep. The campus looked like something out of a movie. Real ivy on brick buildings, a library with leather armchairs, a cafeteria that served real food instead of questionable dishes. They had robotics clubs, debate teams, and advanced courses taught by professors with PhDs. Parents paid extra for intensive SAT prep courses built into the curriculum. Me, I went to Lincoln Public High School where the ceiling tiles leaked when it rained and half the textbooks dated back to the 90s. Our library was a single room with books that hadn't been updated since before I was born. The chemistry lab had equipment so old our teacher apologized before every demonstration. We had one guidance counselor for 400 students. College prep amounted to a bulletin board with brochures about community colleges. When I asked why Tyler went to private school, and I didn't, Mom sat me down at the kitchen table with a serious expression, like she was going to explain quantum physics. She explained that Tyler needed extra academic support because he was gifted and required specialized attention to reach his full potential. She said he had a different learning style that demanded individualized instruction that public school couldn't offer. Gifted? That kid barely graduated with a 2.6 GPA from that expensive private school, while I maintained a 3.9 GPA at my underfunded public high school by working twice as hard. Tyler's idea of studying consisted of skimming summaries 10 minutes before class. He would come home, and Mom would help him with his homework. In fact, she did most of it while Tyler played video games in the same room. Meanwhile, I was up until midnight solving calculus problems from a textbook so outdated it still mentioned cassette tapes as modern technology. I asked my parents for a tutor once because I was struggling in chemistry. Dad said tutors were expensive, and I had to figure it out by asking my teachers for help. Except my teachers each had 150 students and no time for individual attention. But of course, it was Tyler who needed special attention. The double standards were everywhere and impossible to ignore. Tyler had brand-name clothes, Nike shoes, North Face jackets, and designer jeans that cost more than my monthly food budget. Me, I got what was on sale at the outlet center, usually a size too big so I could grow into it. I wore the same 3 shirts in rotation all through high school because that was all I could afford with the money I earned mowing lawns. Tyler's birthdays had themes, decorations, and catered food. For his 13th, they rented a section of the local arcade and invited his whole class. Professional decoration, a custom cake from a real bakery, a gift bag for every guest. The entire event probably cost more than a mortgage payment. Mine amounted to a generic supermarket cake when they remembered. Most years, my birthday passed without anyone noticing until someone mentioned it 3 days later. Oh, was that this week? Well, happy belated birthday. No party, no gifts, no celebration. Just another Tuesday that happened to be the day of my birth. When Tyler made the junior varsity basketball team in his sophomore year, despite his mediocre skill level, my parents bought season tickets and attended every game. They brought signs with his jersey number, yelled loud enough to embarrass him, and posted highlight videos on social media. Tyler played maybe 5 minutes per game, mostly at the end when the result was already decided, but you would have thought he was a first-round NBA pick given their behavior. Me, I made the varsity cross-country team as a freshman and qualified for the state championships after months of training. Running 6 miles every morning before school, doing interval sessions after class, pushing through pain and exhaustion. I qualified for the state competition, which was huge. Only the best runners from each region qualified. You know how many competitions my parents attended? 0, not a single one. They were too busy driving Tyler to basketball camps 3 hours away every weekend. Camps that cost $500 a session for him to learn dribbling techniques he would never really use. I asked them once if they could maybe come to the finals since I had a real chance of placing. Mom said she would try, but Tyler had an important game the same day. The game was a junior varsity basketball game. My race was a state championship. Guess which one they chose to go see? I finished 3rd in my heat and received a medal. I sent them a photo by text. Mom replied, "That's nice, honey. Tyler's team won by 12 points." The message was clear. Tyler's mediocre achievements mattered more than my exceptional ones. When college applications arrived, the inequality reached its peak. Tyler applied to a dozen universities, including some schools he had no business applying to with his grades. Institutions like USC and Boston University that required a GPA of at least 3.5 and good test scores. Tyler had neither, but my parents were convinced their special boy could get in anywhere with the right presentation. They hired a private admissions counselor named Jennifer who charged $200 an hour to polish his essays and craft his application strategy. Jennifer worked with Tyler for 6 months, meeting him twice a week and practically writing his essays for him and coaching him for interviews. They paid for official SAT prep courses costing $1,500, hired a math tutor at $75 an hour to help him in subjects where he was failing, brought in an English tutor to review his essays, and essentially built his entire college application from A to Z with professional help at every step. Me, I managed alone. I filled out my own FAFSA, wrote my essays during lunch breaks at school, researched universities using the school library's single slow computer, applied to 8 institutions, and was accepted to 6 of them, including my first-choice public university with a partial academic scholarship. My parents' reaction when I told them the news: "That's good. Make sure to apply for student loans because we can't help you with tuition." No celebration, no pride, no acknowledgement of the fact that I had obtained a partial scholarship through my own efforts, only immediate concerns about how I would pay the rest. Meanwhile, Tyler was accepted to a mediocre private university 3 states away called something like Henderson College. Nothing impressive, a mid-tier private school with a 65% acceptance rate that accepted practically anyone who could pay. But it was private and far from home, which seemed prestigious in my parents' eyes. They immediately committed to paying all of his tuition fees, about $45,000 per year, housing, meals, textbooks, and even a monthly allowance for his expenses. Expenses like bars, restaurants, and spring break trips. Actually, I did the math out of curiosity. Over 5 years, they spent about $250,000 on Tyler's college experience. Books, tuition, housing, allowance, emergency funds when he went over budget, plane tickets to come home for holidays, packages filled with snacks and expensive supplies. Every penny appeared on the credit card statement I saw once while helping my dad with his computer. My total parental contribution, $0. Not for tuition, not for books, not for housing, nothing. When I graduated high school, Mom handed me a card with $50 inside, saying it was to help me get started. $50, which maybe covered 2 used textbooks. I worked during my college studies, not a little student job for pocket money. I'm talking about full-time night shifts in a distribution warehouse while taking a full course load. The warehouse was this huge facility outside the city where they stored everything from car parts to furniture. I worked at the loading dock, scanning packages, loading trucks, and moving pallets with a forklift once I got certified. The shift started at 10 p.m. and ended at 6 a.m. A minimum of 4 nights a week, sometimes 5 when I needed more money. The work was brutal. Lifting boxes weighing up to 50 pounds, scanning and sorting thousands of packages per shift. Working in a non-air-conditioned warehouse, freezing in winter and stifling in summer. My back constantly hurt. My hands were always scraped and covered in bruises from moving boxes. I went home smelling like cardboard and sweat. My schedule looked like this. Leave for the warehouse at 9:30 p.m. Work until 6 a.m., drive home, shower, change clothes. Be in class by 8 a.m., attend classes until 3 p.m., sometimes later if I had labs. Go to the library to study until 9 p.m. because my apartment was too depressing and I needed to concentrate. Grab a quick dinner, usually instant noodles or whatever was cheapest at the corner store. Sleep for about 5 hours before starting the cycle again. I survived on instant noodles and day-old bagels from the campus cafeteria. I made friends with the cafeteria employees who saved leftover bagels for me and sometimes slipped me a sandwich at closing. I ate a lot of meals consisting of plain pasta with butter because a box of pasta cost 99 cents and butter wasn't expensive. I treated myself to a pizza once a month when I could afford it. I was constantly losing weight because I was burning more calories than I could afford to consume. My apartment was a tiny studio in the worst neighborhood in town. $450 a month, which was cheap for a student, but still absorbed most of my paycheck. There were stains on the carpet from when I moved in, a kitchenette consisting of a hot plate and a mini fridge, and neighbors who argued loud enough to be heard through the walls at 3 a.m. The shower barely worked, the heating was inconsistent, and I'm almost sure there was mold somewhere in the bathroom that I just learned to ignore. I slept on a mattress on the floor for the first 2 years because I couldn't afford a bed frame. I used milk crates as furniture. I only had one lamp because the overhead lighting drove up the electric bill too much. I wore the same rotation of clothes until they were worn out. Then I went to thrift stores to replace them. My winter coat had a broken zipper that I kept closed with safety pins. My shoes had holes that I repaired with duct tape. Meanwhile, Tyler was living his best life at Henderson College. His Facebook was filled with photos of fraternity parties, spring break trips to Cancun and Miami, outings to expensive restaurants, concerts, and sporting events. He constantly posted about his college experience as if he were documenting a coming-of-age movie, photos with his frat brothers, all in matching outfits that probably cost $200 each. Images of formal balls where he rented a tuxedo, weekend getaways to ski resorts and beaches. My parents paid for everything. When I asked Tyler once how he financed all that, he simply shrugged and said Mom and Dad sent him money whenever he needed it. They want me to enjoy college, he explained as if it were normal, as if parents funding one child's party life while the other works night shifts and eats instant noodles was a completely ordinary situation. I graduated with $60,000 in student debt, chronic back pain after 4 years of lifting boxes nonstop, and stress-related health issues. Constant headaches, stomach trouble, and insomnia even when I had time to sleep. My degree was in supply chain management because I had become interested in logistics while working at the warehouse and figured I might as well study something in which I already had practical experience. Tyler joined a fraternity his first semester, went on spring break vacations to Cancun 3 years in a row, posted Instagram stories from bars every weekend, and graduated in 5 years because he failed organic chemistry twice and had to retake several other courses. My parents paid for the extra year without complaining. They also paid his fraternity dues, his spring break trips, his meal plan upgrades, and sent him packages filled with snacks and expensive supplies every month. After graduation, things somehow got worse before they got better. Tyler moved back home for free while he found himself and explored opportunities. This exploration mostly consisted of sleeping until noon and playing video games while my parents brought him breakfast in bed. He woke up around 11 a.m., showered, played Call of Duty until 3 p.m., then spent the afternoon networking, which meant scrolling LinkedIn and occasionally sending connection requests to strangers. This lifestyle lasted 18 months. He sometimes applied to jobs, but refused anything that wasn't a management position or didn't pay a six-figure salary. He had no work experience other than a summer internship in his sophomore year that my dad got him through a contact. But Tyler was convinced he deserved to start as a director of something. He sent maybe 5 applications a month, spent a total of 1 hour looking for work, then complained that the job market was broken and companies no longer recognized talent. My parents fully supported this. Dad told his friends that Tyler was being strategic in his career choices and waiting for the right opportunity. Mom defended his unemployment by saying he was taking time to find his voice and shouldn't settle for just any job. They let him live rent-free, paid for his food, car insurance, and phone bill, and even gave him an allowance for professional networking expenses, which meant dinners out and coffee dates where he pitched his non-existent expertise to anyone who would listen. Me, I moved to another city to work immediately after graduation. I landed a decent job at a regional logistics company earning $42,000 a year, which felt like the jackpot to me after years of surviving on warehouse wages and odd jobs. I started in June, 2 weeks after graduation. I didn't even take a break. I went straight from final exams to a full-time job because I couldn't afford to be unemployed for even a week. I rented a studio that was practically a closet with a hot plate, but it was mine and I could afford it. Barely. After rent of $800, student loans of $650, utilities of $100, car insurance of $120, gas of $80, and food of $200 if I was careful, I had about $200 left per month for everything else. Clothes, emergencies, any form of life beyond simple survival had to come from those $200. Store-brand cereal for dinner most nights because after rent and loans, there wasn't much left. I meal prepped on Sundays, making large quantities of rice and beans, pasta with basic sauce, or the cheapest protein on sale. I learned to cook out of necessity because eating out was a luxury I couldn't afford. I bought a rice cooker at a thrift store for $5, and that thing saved me hundreds of dollars over the years. My parents never came to visit me, not once in 3 years. They were too busy funding Tyler's various ventures which required seed capital they willingly provided. He tried day trading for 6 months. Convinced he could make millions from his childhood bedroom, Dad gave him $15,000 to invest. Tyler lost it all in 4 months on bad cryptocurrency bets and speculative stocks that crashed. My parents' reaction, that's how you learn. Then he tried launching an MLM protein supplement business. He signed up as a distributor, bought $8,000 worth of stock that he stored in the garage, spent 3 months trying to convince his friends to buy overpriced nutritional products, and made maybe $200 in sales before giving up. My parents absorbed the loss literally. They drank protein shakes for a year to use up the stock. Then came the social media consulting business. Tyler created a website and business cards. He proclaimed himself a digital marketing strategist, despite having 0 clients or proven results. My parents paid $5,000 for the website design, logo, and initial marketing materials. Tyler constantly talked about his business on social media, sharing articles on digital trends with comments like, "This is exactly what I've been saying all along." He got 0 clients in 8 months before quietly abandoning the project to move on to the next. Every family gathering became a Tyler appreciation event. Thanksgiving conversations revolved around his latest business idea. Christmas was about his needs and wants. Easter dinner was dedicated to his job search and how companies simply didn't understand his vision. Family members asked him about his plans and nodded as if he were sharing revolutionary ideas instead of half-baked notions from entrepreneur blogs. Meanwhile, I got maybe 5 minutes of attention if I was lucky. "How's work?" "Good, it's fine." Then an immediate return to the Tyler saga. No one asked about my career progression, my struggles, or my goals. I was simply the one who was responsible and handled everything alone. So, there was nothing interesting to discuss. Tyler was the one who needed support, attention, advice, endless second chances, and blank checks to fund his delusions. By 26, I had paid off my student loans through aggressive budgeting and side hustles. I lived on about 60% of my income, putting everything else toward loan repayment. I worked overtime whenever possible. I took freelance logistics consulting projects on weekends. I sold plasma twice a month for extra cash. I did whatever it took to eliminate that debt because I was tired of seeing a chunk of every paycheck disappear into interest. I started investing small amounts in index funds, learning everything I could about personal finance through library books and free online resources. I read every personal finance book I could find on compound interest, tax-advantaged accounts, and diversification strategies. I learned what Roth IRAs were, 401k plans with employer matching, and the difference between growth investing and value investing. I started with about $100 a month in investments, gradually increasing as my income grew and my expenses remained stable. I constantly lived below my means. I drove a 10-year-old sedan that I maintained myself after learning the basics of auto mechanics from YouTube videos. I cooked all my meals at home. I cut my own hair for a while before admitting the result was terrible and finding a cheap barber, and I wore my clothes until they literally fell into rags. Every bonus and every raise went directly into savings and investments. Most months, I could save 40% of my income simply by refusing to increase my lifestyle as my earnings increased. At 28, everything changed. I was recruited by a tech startup called StreamLogix. They were trying to revolutionize supply chain management for e-commerce companies, but their logistics were a disaster. Shipments were constantly late. Inventory management was almost random and customer satisfaction was at rock bottom. They needed someone to build their logistics system from scratch. Someone who understood both the tech side and the concrete operation of warehouses. The salary was good, about $85,000, almost double what I was making before. But the real draw was the stock package. 2% of the company if I managed to make their distribution network work. 2% doesn't sound huge until you do the math of what that represents if the company succeeds. I negotiated hard to get that percentage, knowing that startup stock is worth either millions or nothing at all, depending on the company's success. I spent 18 months working 80-hour weeks solving problems no one else could fix and building systems from the ground up. I implemented new warehouse management software, reorganized their entire shipping strategy, negotiated better rates with carriers, trained staff on proper procedures, and transformed their distribution network from a disaster into one of the most efficient systems in their market segment. Customer satisfaction went from 60% to 94%. Delivery times decreased by 40%. Costs dropped by 25%. The company was acquired by a large corporation when I was 30. StreamLogix had gone from a struggling startup to a legitimate player in e-commerce logistics, and a Fortune 500 company wanted their technology and client portfolio. My stock package was suddenly worth $8 million. After taxes, I walked away with about $5,200,000 in real, liquid assets. I didn't tell anyone. I continued living in the same modest apartment, driving the same old car, and wearing the same clothes bought on sale. I invested most of that money conservatively in index funds, bonds, and real estate investment trusts. I kept working because I genuinely enjoyed challenges and wanted my wealth to keep growing. I built a diversified portfolio that grew steadily over the next few years. At 32, I made another wise investment in a logistics tech platform that was acquired 18 months later. That brought me an additional $12 million. Then a real estate opportunity generated another $4 million. A few other smaller investments also performed well. At 34, I had a portfolio of about $31 million, and I still hadn't told anyone. Why would I? My whole life, my family showed me I wasn't a priority. They chose Tyler again and again. I owed them no information about my success. I kept a modest lifestyle, a nice apartment, but nothing ostentatious. I replaced my car with a reliable, but not extravagant model. I sometimes ate at good restaurants. I donated quietly to causes I cared about. I simply didn't flaunt my wealth, especially not in front of my family. Meanwhile, Tyler, at 29, continued to find himself, still lived with our parents rent-free, still pitched business ideas that led to nothing, and still received money from parents who were now starting to dip into their retirement savings to fund his dreams. He had launched a sort of cryptocurrency consulting service that consisted of posting messages about Bitcoin on Twitter and presenting himself as a financial advisor despite a total lack of qualifications. My parents continued to ask me when I was going to settle down, buy a house, and start a family, and made remarks saying I should be more ambitious like Tyler, who was building an empire from their basement. The irony was suffocating. Then came Thanksgiving. This year, the gathering was at my parents' house as usual. Tyler was there with his girlfriend Madison, who seemed nice but was clearly impressed by his entrepreneur status. My aunt and uncle came with my cousin, who had just gotten engaged. The usual dynamic set in. Everyone was raving about Tyler's latest business idea, something about NFTs and digital assets that made no sense but sounded impressive. He wore expensive clothes my parents had obviously bought. He talked about revolutionizing the financial sector while living in their basement. My aunt asked me how work was going. I replied that it was going well. I had recently accepted a position as a senior advisor at a large logistics firm. Before I could say more, Tyler interrupted with a remark saying that traditional employment was dead and he was building generational wealth through decentralized finance. Generational wealth from the basement at 29. The dinner took the usual turn of an interrogation. Why wasn't I married? Did I own any real estate? Wasn't I worried about my future? Tyler had so much ambition while I was settling for an ordinary job. Madison nodded like Tyler was a business genius rather than a 29-year-old unemployed man living off his parents. Then my cousin asked a question about investments. She had just gotten engaged, and they were saving for a wedding and a house. She wanted advice on how to invest their money. Tyler immediately launched into his speech on cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Ethereum, altcoins, NFTs. According to him, traditional investing was outdated. He claimed to have obtained significant returns trading cryptocurrency. My parents nodded with approval. Everything he said was false or dangerously misleading. You don't put savings intended for a wedding into cryptocurrencies. It was terrible advice that could ruin their financial future. I should have kept quiet. I had spent years saying nothing while Tyler was praised for his mediocrity. But watching him risk sabotaging my cousin's financial planning finally broke something in me. That is actually very bad advice, I said calmly. You shouldn't put short-term savings into volatile assets. For a 3 or 5 year goal like a wedding and a house, you need stable and liquid investments like index funds, bonds, or high-yield savings accounts, not cryptocurrencies. The table went silent. Tyler's face turned red. What do you know about investing? You just have an ordinary job. I know enough, I replied. Oh, really? Tyler's voice dripped with condescension. How much have you made with your investments? A few thousand. It was the moment. I could have backed down, stayed humble, kept my secret. But his smug smile, my parents' approving looks, Madison's admiring expression, all for a guy who had never earned anything by himself, made me tired of pretending. About $31 million, I said softly. Total, absolute silence. Tyler scoffed. Yeah, right. I'm serious. My portfolio is currently valued at about $31 million. I started with stock from a startup buyout, then made wise investments. It grew very well. My dad's fork hit his plate with a crash. You have $31 million? Roughly, yes. My mother stared at me, mouth agape like she was trying to catch flies. Tyler's laugh died out. You're lying. It's impossible that you have that much money. You drive an old car. Yes, because I don't need to impress anyone. The money is invested, it works for me, it grows. My uncle asked if I was serious. I pulled out my phone, opened my portfolio app, and showed him the summary. His eyes went wide. That's incredible. Good for you. My aunt looked genuinely happy. That's wonderful. You've done so well. For my parents and Tyler, it was a different story. My mother's face went from shock to something harder. My dad looked like he was doing calculations, mentally adding up all the money spent on Tyler. Tyler looked like he had been punched in the gut. Madison was looking at me with new interest. That look that says, wait, maybe I bet on the wrong brother. The rest of dinner was awkward. Conversations tried to start then died immediately. Tyler shot me looks like I had betrayed him. My parents seemed unable to process the news. My cousin kept asking questions about investments, which I answered willingly. After dinner, I helped clear the table. My mother cornered me in the kitchen. Why didn't you tell us? Not, we're proud, or that's amazing. Just an accusation. Because the subject never came up. And honestly, why would I have? You've never really been interested in my life. That's not fair. We've always cared about you. Mom, you didn't attend a single one of my cross-country meets. You didn't contribute a single dollar to my education while spending over $200,000 on Tyler. You never visited me. Don't tell me you cared about me when your actions prove otherwise. She looked hurt. We did our best with what we had. Tyler needed more support. Tyler needed accountability. I cut in. He needed parents to teach him responsibility instead of funding every failed business idea. He's 29 and lives in your basement. That's not support, that's enabling him. My dad appeared in the doorway. We should talk about this as a family. That conversation took place in their living room 30 minutes later. Tyler sat with his arms crossed. Madison, next to him, looked uncomfortable. My parents sat opposite me like it was an intervention. Dad started by asking me questions about how I had earned this money. I explained the startup stock, the subsequent investments, the diversification strategy. I stayed broad because honestly, they wouldn't have understood the details anyway. Mom wanted to know why I had hidden this. I explained that I hadn't hidden anything. I simply hadn't announced it. There's a difference. Wealth isn't something you flaunt, especially not in front of people who spent your whole life treating you as less important than your brother. Then came the part one was expecting. Well, Tyler said slowly, I think it would be fair for you to share some of that wealth with the family. We're your family. That money should benefit all of us. I actually laughed. And why exactly would I do that? Because that's what a family does, my mother chimed in. We support each other. We supported you all your life. Stop. I held up my hand. You supported Tyler all my life. You spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on him while I received nothing. You funded his lifestyle, his failed businesses, his extended adolescence. I worked to pay for my studies with nothing from you. I built my career with nothing from you. I made a fortune with nothing from you. This wealth exists thanks to my work, my decisions, my sacrifices. None of you contributed to it in any way whatsoever. Dad tried the guilt trip. We gave you a place to grow up, food, a roof, and education. The bare legal minimum, I interrupted. That's not something I owe you for. That's called parenting. You're supposed to provide that. You don't earn bonus points for meeting basic requirements. Tyler's face was getting redder and redder. So, you're just going to keep $31 million for yourself while your family struggles? Struggles? I repeated, incredulous. You live rent-free in a house our parents own. You eat the food they buy. You wear clothes they pay for. You aren't struggling. You're an adult fully subsidized by our aging parents while pretending to be an entrepreneur. I'm building something, he yelled. You aren't building anything. I shot back. You've been building something for 7 years with zero results. You lost tens of thousands of dollars of their money in schemes and scams. You're 29, and you have never supported yourself for a single month of your adult life. Madison shifted nervously, clearly starting to see what I had seen for years. My mother started crying. How can you be so cruel to your own brother? How can you ask me to fund the lifestyle of someone who has contributed nothing? I replied, you spent my whole life showing me exactly the value you placed on me compared to Tyler. You made your choice. Now I'm making mine. Dad pulled the family card. Blood is thicker than water. Family takes care of family. We raised you the same way. That is false and you know it, I said sharply. You didn't raise us the same way. You raised Tyler like a prince and me like an afterthought. All the resources, all the opportunities, all the attention went to him. I was just the backup kid you tolerated. That's not true. Mom protested. Mom, you missed my state championship meet to drive Tyler to a basketball camp. You bought him a new car and gave me a broken bike. You paid for his college tuition entirely and told me to take out loans. Stop pretending you treated us equally when we both know that's completely false. The room went silent again. The truth has that effect. Tyler tried one last time. Look, I'm sorry you see your childhood that way, but that's in the past. I'm trying to build something real, and I just need some seed capital. As my brother, someone who has the means to help, I think you have a moral obligation. I have absolutely no obligation to fund your continued failure, I replied coldly. You had every advantage I never had: private school, a paid education, extended financial support into your late 20s. If you didn't succeed with all that help, more money won't fix what's wrong. So that's it, he demanded. You're going to keep all that money for yourself? Yes, I replied simply, because I earned it, and because you would waste it in a year, like every other resource you were given. Madison stood up. I think I should go. Tyler barely noticed her leaving. He was too busy staring at me like I was the villain of the story. My parents spent the next hour trying every manipulation tactic possible: guilt, obligation, family unity. What would other family members think? How could I be so selfish? Didn't I understand everything they had sacrificed for me? And so on. I let them talk until they exhausted themselves. When they finally stopped, I stood up. Here is what is going to happen, I said calmly. I'm going to leave. I am going to continue living my life and managing my wealth as I see fit. You are going to continue encouraging Tyler's extended adolescence until you have drained your retirement savings. And we will have very little contact in the future because this conversation clearly showed that you're only interested in me now because I have something you want. That's not fair, Mom cried. It's perfectly fair, I replied. You had 34 years to treat me like someone important. You chose not to. You can't suddenly pretend I matter now that I have money. I walked to the door. Tyler followed me. You're really going to do this? He asked. Cut us off like this. You can't cut off someone you were never really connected to, I pointed out. It's hard to break a bond that never existed. I drove home in silence. My phone started blowing up less than an hour later with messages from my parents, from Tyler, even from my aunt and uncle asking what had happened after I left. I turned off notifications and went to bed. The next week was a nightmare of harassment. My parents called every day. Tyler sent long messages explaining that I was destroying the family, that I owed him something as a brother, that he had always looked up to me, and this was devastating him. Madison left him, which he blamed me for, saying I had humiliated him in front of his girlfriend. My mother created a family group chat to explain that she was worried about my mental health and thought I might need professional help because I was too angry and resentful. Several family members contacted me asking if I was okay and what really happened at Thanksgiving. I sent a single message in the family group. I am fine. I succeeded. I built my wealth through hard work and smart decisions. My family spent my childhood and early adulthood showing me I wasn't a priority. Now they want access to my money. I said no. That's the whole story. Then I muted the conversation. My uncle called me personally to tell me he understood and was proud of me. My cousin messaged me to thank me for my financial advice and say she always knew I was the most sensible one. A few other family members contacted me privately to support me, but my parents and Tyler lost their minds. Tyler started posting on social media about fake families and people forgetting where they come from. He never mentioned me by name, but it was obviously directed at me. He posted vague quotes about loyalty, brotherhood, and how money changes people. The irony that a 29-year-old man living in his parents' basement and fully funded by them was talking about change escaped him completely. My mother called from unknown numbers when I blocked hers, leaving voicemails saying I was breaking her heart and she hadn't raised me to be so selfish. The woman who gave me a rusty bike while buying Tyler a new car was lecturing me on selfishness. Dad tried the rational approach. He sent emails with spreadsheets showing that I could easily give a few million to Tyler to start and would have plenty left over, as if I were an ATM supposed to dispense money to the family on demand. I ignored everything. I focused on my work, my investments, my life. I started dating someone who knew nothing about my family drama and liked me for who I was, not for what I owned. I made significant donations to charities that were actually making a difference. I lived well without showing off. 3 months after Thanksgiving, Tyler showed up at my apartment. Security called me because he wasn't on my guest list. I told them to send him away. He refused to leave. Security threatened to call the police. He started screaming that he was my brother and had the right to see me. I went down to prevent him from getting into legal trouble. He looked bad, unshaven, wrinkled clothes, a desperate look in his eyes. I need your help, he said immediately. No. Just listen to me. No. Please, I'll pay you back. I just need some seed capital for this business. No. Why are you like this? His voice cracked. I'm your brother. We're family. You have so much and I have nothing. How can you watch me struggle like this? I looked at him for a long time. This child in an adult's body who had received everything his whole life and wasted it all, who had lived off our parents into his late 20s while draining their retirement, who had never held a real job, never faced real consequences, never built anything lasting. Tyler, I said softly, you don't have nothing because I have everything. You have nothing because you never built anything. You were given every advantage I had to fight for, and you wasted them all. That is not my fault, and that is not my problem. I made mistakes, he admitted, but everyone deserves a second chance. You had about 50 chances, I interrupted, funded by mom and dad. None worked because you don't want to do the real work. You want the result without the effort. Life doesn't work like that. So you're going to leave me with nothing. His voice rose. While you sit on $31 million. I'm going to leave you exactly where your choices led you, I corrected, facing the consequences of your decisions. Maybe real hardship will teach you what a lifetime of coddling never could. I turned to go back inside. I will never forgive you for this, he yelled behind me. Perfect, I replied without turning around. That way we're even. I haven't heard from him since. My parents still try from time to time. Birthday messages I don't reply to, greeting cards with guilt-inducing messages about family forgiveness, and random attempts to restart the conversation that I ignore. Tyler apparently ended up finding a real job. An entry-level position at a tech company, living in a shared apartment with roommates, discovering what it actually means to support himself at 30. Good for him, I guess. My life is better than ever. A great relationship, fulfilling work, financial security, and the peace of mind of knowing I owe nothing to people who never valued me until I had something they wanted. Comment. What I really take away from this is the power of defining your own value. Sometimes the people closest to you are not the ones who see you most clearly. Setting boundaries is not an act of cruelty. It is a profound act of self-care. It is about protecting your peace and making space for healing. True strength comes from taking full responsibility for your own happiness and success. Your past does not have to dictate your future, and you do not owe anyone an explanation for the life you have built. Remember that kindness also means being kind to yourself first. You always have the right to choose your well-being over dysfunctional dynamics. I hope you all find the courage to build a life that feels right and peaceful to you. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.